Okay guys, welcome back to the unit 7 second section and second part of the unit 7, that is risk management. So as the name suggests, risk, what do you mean by the term risk? So before going for the definition, let's take a simple example. Suppose today you are planning to travel from source to destinations, and for that you are using a vehicle and you are now playing the role as a driver. So the very first moment once you start to travel from source to destination, there is a possibility of a term called as a risk, and risk is accident, which you have not expected, but if it may come in, which brings some kind of a negative impacts into your scheduled activity, we will call it as what? A risk. So while traveling there is a possibility of negative impact called as what? Accident. So that accident is one of the major risk in a traveling from source to destination. So I hope you got the clear idea what do you mean by the term called as a risk. So when we are talking about the software project, the risk is what? Which is not expected, but if come in future may cause the negative effect over the output of the project, and it may impact to the quality of the project, it may impact to the schedule of the project, it may impact resources of the project, and the entire effect of the risk is that project may not be completed successfully. So we have to understand the possible risk into the futures. Now is it the case that you can't travel? It might be the case that you can travel from source to destination without accident by taking utmost care. It means you cannot avoid the risk, but you can mitigate the risk. It means while traveling you follow the rules and regulations so that there would not be an accident. Just imagine you are driving your vehicle from your own side, but unfortunately the person came from wrong side and put a big dash to you. Is there any fault from your side? Definitely not. But that the person, he brings his car towards you and had a dash which brings an accident. It means you are not expected, you are following your all rules and regulations, but till there is a possibility of risk. It means you cannot avoid the accidents, but you can take preventive measures so that impact of risk can be reduced. It is called as what? Risk management. So these are the points what we are going to study in unit 2 unit 7 section 2. So let's talk about the concept. Risk management means try to minimize the impact of risk. We call that concept as a risk management. Now it focuses on the project risk, as I rightly said to you, technical risk and the business risk. What are the possible reasons, or maybe the possibility of what we can say categories? So from where you can have a risk. So these are the four parts. First is actor, technology, task and structure. These are the four things from where you may have an risk. One is actor, second is technology, third is structure, fourth is task. Now actors, these are related to all those who involved in the project, including developers, users, manager. And a risk could be that high staff turnover leads to information of importance to the project being lost. Means these are the human beings, and the risk of the human beings. If suppose your manager only left the job, now how you are going to handle this? And the manager left the job because of expecting high salary, and if you agree to pay the high salary, your project cost is going to get increased. So this is one of the reasons. Second is technology. This, it includes that implement the project and that embedded in the project deliverables. We are talking about the technology. Means suppose today in 2002, means 2020, you are working in Android version 9 and you have developed an applications, and in 2000, means 2021, you are about to hand over the product to the customer, and that moment customer is saying that I am not using Android 9, I might be using Android 12. So this is what technology. Understand how the technology is changing, and if you are using the old technology, there may be a possibility of a risk. Next is structure. This includes management procedures, Risk is here that a group who need to carry out a particular project task are not informed of this need because they are not part of the project communication network. As the name suggests, structure means we have to follow some team structures for this moment. Just understand, means suppose as a staff I want to do something, but without taking permission of my higher authorities I am not supposed to do. So I have to follow the structure. Sometimes I need to take proper permissions, and if there is no permission I have to wait till their permission comes, and it may cause a deadlines into a deadlines risk into my project scenarios. Next is task. Task means nothing but activities. These are nothing but the works to be carried out. A typical risk is that the amount of effort needed to carry out that task is underestimated. Means while we are working with the project plan, we considered a particular activity, suppose coding, and for coding I said that I will complete the coding activity within 4 weeks, but unfortunately it is not completed. It is taking more than 6 weeks. So this is what the kind of a risk because of task, because I don't understand the complexity of that. So these are the 4 possible categories of risk. Means because of these 4 category there may be a possibility of risk in your project which may cause negative impact into your project scenario. These are few some more examples, so you can kindly go through this self-explanatory. As I rightly said, these are the categories of the risk. Now same risk factors. Now is it possible to avoid the risk? Definitely not. So our intention is to manage the risk. Means if risk came, make sure that it will cause a minimum loss to your project. So that concept we are calling as a risk management. And how we are going to do the risk management? So this is the simply framework to deal with the risk. First is it needs to identify the steps, and the steps are very simple. First is risk identification, and second is risk analysis and priority, third is risk planning, and fourth is risk monitoring. So let's take same example. Suppose you are starting from source moving towards the destination by your vehicle, and you are planning to play the role as a driver. So what will be the possible identifications of the risk we have to do is, suppose you have started your journey and in between you find that the petrol, diesel, whatever the things there in the car is about to finish, brake is not working, horn also not working properly, gear systems also not working properly. So these are the things you have identified. These all things are nothing but risk. Now once you identified the risk, like petrol or the what we can say fuel of the vehicle is about to empty, second is brake, third is gear, and fourth is what? Horn. Now these are the 4 things you have identified. Now you have to analyze impact of this risk to your project. So suppose petrol is not in your vehicle, fuel is about to end, means there will be no fuel. So what will be the risk of your project? Means risk to your car, you cannot go ahead, maximum impact is there. So identify the priority. Second is brake is not working. It may be the case that brake is not working. So what you can do? Is it a case that you will stop your vehicle? Definitely not. If brake is not working properly, you will start your vehicle. Means you can use a vehicle with an intention that you will not go with a overspeed. Means you will try to drive your vehicle with a certain speed limit. Third is gear system. If gears are not working, you will decide the priority because it has an impact on your average and all other parts. And the next is horn. If horn is not working, it doesn't have too much impact on your entire journey. Getting? So you have to analyze, and based on analysis means based on impact of its a project, you have to give the priority, and according to that you can do a planning. Means you identified these 4 problems. So now you have a time, means you have to reach from source to destination within 2 hours, and you have only 10 to 15 minutes time slag. Means you are allowed it to late by maximum 15 minutes. So what you can do, within that 15 minutes allowed it time to reach to the destination, you will try to cover the problems. For that you have to perform risk planning and risk monitoring. Now again with this same, we have to think, we have to analyze the various activities. So this is what the time dependencies, and they have calculated activity sequence of the activities. Again we are talking about the risk management. Now looking towards the software project, we have taken example of a vehicle. Now the risk with the software projects, these are the some highlighted risks like staff turnover, management change, hardware unavailability. So these are the self-explanatory, you can kindly go through this. We'll take one more example on this. Now how to manage the risk, and the process is, I said, risk identification, analysis and priority, planning and simply monitoring process. So simply remember the four steps. First is risk identification, second is risk analysis and priority, third is risk planning, fourth is risk monitoring. Identify project, product and business risk. Assess the second is analysis, means possibility, penalty of this risk, means impact of this risk, and based on that the risk which has a very less impact will get a less priority. Means horn, if horn is not working, will not have a big impact on accident, so less priority should be given to horn. But gear not working or brake not working should be get highest priority. So risk analysis. Planning, draw plans to avoid immense impact of the risk. According to that, the four what we have identified in our example. So we have to take proper considerations to have a minimum impact on the projects. And next is risk monitor, monitor the risk throughout the project. Means by consideration of these all the problems, still you could able to drive the vehicle from source to destination. So we call as a risk monitoring. This is the simplest process. Simply remember the four steps, and according to that you can have an impact span. And now the most important part is this diagram. Simply remember this diagram. There will be always question on this risk management. So simply remember these two parts, a risk assessment, a risk control. In the risk assessment, the parts, and risk control, the two major parts. So risk assessment, identification, analysis and priorities. Risk management, planning, risk resolution and risk monitoring. This is the simplest part you have to take into the consideration. The same diagram is explained in more details with examples. So simply remember this left and right corners of each, and there will be always question on this point for minimum 8 marks. So these are the self-explanatory, you can read it. So now next is, what is the goal of risk assessment? The goal of the risk assessment is to prioritize the risk so that the attention and resources can be focused on more risky items. Risk identification is the first stop in the risk assessment, which identifies all the different risks for a particular project. In the risk analysis, the probability of occurrences of risk has to be estimated along with loss that it will occur, and this entire done through the discussion using experience and understanding of situations. Other approach for the risk analysis includes studying the probability and outcomes of the possible decision. So what are the possible ways to identify the risk is technology risk, the four things what we have studied: people risk, organization risk, structure risk, technology, requirement risk, estimation risk, etc. Risk analysis assess probability and seriousness, and we have to perform the analysis, means we have to understand the analysis, impact, seriousness of each risk. Probability, what will be the characteristics that we can give to the probability of risk? Very low, moderate, high or very high. Risk effects might be terrible, serious, toleranceable or insignificant, like this. Next is risk planning. Here we have to take consideration about the each risk and develop a strategy to manage that risk, like avoid, how, whether is it possible to avoid the risk or minimize the risk, or contingency plans. Avoid the strategy means the probability that risk will arise is reduced. Avoid. Minimization strategies means, suppose you are driving a vehicle, if you are going with your left side, where very less chances of their accidents, means this is avoidance strategy. Minimization strategies, the impact of risk on the project or product will be reduced by taking utmost care. And contingency means emergency, means you have started your journey and anyhow you have to reach within a 2 hours, means to cover up that time without worrying you have started driving your vehicle from speed is emergency plans. If the risk arises, contingency plans are to be planned to deal with that risk, means depending on the road conditions there is not a single vehicle, means still you will plan with this 30 kilometer per hour known. In that case you start with your own travel. That is what contingency plans, that is related to the term called as what risk planning. Next is risk monitoring. As the name suggests, monitoring means observations. Assess each identified risk regularly to decide whether or not it is being less or more probable. Also assess whether the effect of the risk have changed, and also make sure that each risk should be discussed at the management progress meetings. And what are the ways to identify the risk? The simplest part is checklist, means to-do list, and second is brainstorming, means suppose you are moving for an exam and your parents may are asking before going for exam, make sure that you have a pen with you, you have a college I card with you, you have other accessories or maybe hall tickets that you required. These all the things they are asking you to check this whether these are with you or not, called as one checklist. Second is brainstorming as the name suggests, continuously focusing and continuously discussion that you have to do this, you have to do this to achieve your expected quality, called as what brainstorming. These are the two important aspects while we need to take into consideration while understanding or identifying the risk. Next is risk control. As the name suggests, taking corrective actions if any problem occurs. To solve that problems, how the corrective actions you take is called as what control activities. To in respect to the risk, we have the following activities. Why the risk is important, why it should be managed. We have to think what should be delivered regarding the risk management and when. Who is responsible for performing the different risk management activities? How will the risk approach be takes? How many resources are needed? So these are the things we need to take into considerations while we are planning on risk controls. Next, that's all about the risk. Now we'll move to the third part of the chapter called as what project monitoring plans and trackings. So kindly go through this particular diagram. If any problem there, let me know, or you can read the more details on my blog, and also I have shared much details of the same on Google Classroom, so you can kindly go through the Google Classroom. Now let's move to the next part of the chapter called as one project monitoring plans. Now modifications are also needed as per more information about the project becomes available due to personal turnover. Proper project management can play a significant role in finding the project management. So for that there are the different methods that we can use. One of the common method for using is using by timesheet, or we can use simply some graphs that called as what figure of the cost schedule versus milestone graphs. And for that we can take examples of STPS. So what is STPS? STPS is nothing but summary task planning sheet, means the activities planned and versus activities carried out, and that activities can be considered as a part of unit development folder or earned value methods. So simply remember this bar: milestone graph, PDR, CDR, levels of testings, expected parts. These are this simply means dot 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 is expected, means the planned parts, and that clear line is actual expense. If any deviation comes, variation comes, why these variations and all. And to understand the progress of the project, we can use the two techniques: earned value method and unit development, that is UDF. It's a very simple one, you can kindly go through it. Means suppose simply I am going to start to read a book and suppose 10 chapters are there. So if I ask you the status of the book, how many chapters you have studied, it means how many units you have covered. Unit development concept to measure the progress. And the previous one is to understand the earn value, means Based on each chapter I will ask you a questions whether you got it or not. Earn value methods. Next is reviews. Reviews means purpose of the review is to get the information whatever the task assigned to you, whether that task is done by you or not. So simply remember, review is nothing but a type of a testing where you will check whether the expected part is done or not. That is nothing but simplest method we call as a testing process. So the techniques is again the same techniques, UDF or this. And the last bit of the chapter is measurement of the project tracking and all. So the objectives behind this is measuring the size of a software quantity, assessing the level of complexity involved, strength of the module by measuring couplings, accessing the testing techniques, specifying when to stop the testing, determining the date of release of the software, and estimating the cost of resources and project salad. These are the things we can take or understand the progress of project, means whether we are tracking the projects. So simply we need to take care about the measures and metrics. So measure is nothing but can be defined as quantitative indication of amount, dimension, capacity or size of the product, where metrics can be identified as a quantitative measure that allow software engineers to identify the efficiency and improve the quality of a software process, project and product. So we simply call it as a metrics, measure and metrics. So simply remember the difference between measure and metrics. Let's take simple example. Suppose I want to bring oil that we can use for a hair. So sometimes it is given in terms of liters, or sometimes it given in terms of what we can say kg, in terms of kilos. So the same quantity can be measured in two different metrics. One is a liter and second is it's a weight, based on its weight. So these are the weight and liters are the metrics to measure the one thing. So same thing is there. These are the quantitative approaches to recognize the parts. And in case of software metrics, we have to focus on the 8 lines. The first is simple and computable. Second is the software must be consistent, objective, consistent in use of units and dimensions, programming language independent, high quality, easy to calibrate, easy to obtain, validation, robust and values. So these are the major things we need to take into considerations while tracking about the projects. So any doubts so far? Okay, so more details you can read on my blog also. So just conclude this. So what we have studied in this, we have covered what is quality, what is risk and project tracking. So quality, we have to set the first which quality you want to achieve, and to achieve that quality what activities you are going to do. So second is risk, unexpected things and which may cause a reverse impact, means negative impact on the project. We call it as what? Risk. We cannot avoid the risk, but we can mitigate the impact of risk. So that concept we are calling risk management. So these are my details. You can kindly log into these details. For any query, you can contact to me. Thank you.